Yeah, thank you. I think you gave us a good start. I do have additional information about myself as we get started, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I work at Texas Health Resources, and I'm a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt there. I used to work for Dr. Britt Barrett. Probably from 2013 to 2014, 2012 to the years start to run together a little bit, but it was a pleasure working for him while he was at Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital. And we'll get started. The name of this presentation is Mapping Your Path to Success with Lean Six Sigma. And I've heard from a lot of people just wanting to know what is Lean Six Sigma about. And so that gives me a good flavor about how we want to kind of package this to the crowd. I mean, it's not so much a classic presentation where I'm going to kind of walk through what is Six Sigma, but I do want to speak more about how Six Sigma in your career. So, if navigating your career is a journey, how can Lean Six Sigma help you to have the best journey possible? So we'll take a little bit of time to kind of talk about that. What can Lean Six Sigma do for especially young professionals in their career as they're just starting out? So, and again, this is going to be, I really want this to be a conversation. So again, you can stop if you do use the virtual hand raise, please feel free to. We'll stop as long as we don't have a barrage of questions all at once. I think we can take a little bit of time to kind of answer some questions along the way. So, all right, let me start sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep, we can see it.
All right, I'm trying to get my screen back up here. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So the topics for today, we're going to start by just talking about mapping the path to professional success. I mean, that's kind of where we all are, right? A lot of you are young professionals trying to, get your start in your careers. And so we'll start by just talking about, how do we do that using Lean Six Sigma? Then we'll get into a little bit about what Lean Six Sigma is, not a lot, but a little bit, just so that you guys know exactly what it is. Why does healthcare value Lean Six Sigma? And then we'll talk about what I call CEOs, career enhancement opportunities. And so how can Lean Six Sigma help you obtain career enhancement opportunities? There's some myths about Lean Six Sigma I'm gonna try to bust. This is Mythbusters Lean Six Sigma edition. And then I'm gonna give a couple of words about suggestions for mapping your own path to success. And we'll take questions, but we'll take questions throughout the whole presentation. So let's just start with mapping the path to success. I remember when I was just coming out of college, and I actually have it somewhere around here where I was putting together my bills, or what I thought were going to be my bills when I got out of school and got my job. And like the total combination of all my costs were like $400. I had no experience about, how much it would cost, for rent or cable or anything like that. So I had a very naive perception of how, things were going to work in the world. And, sometimes, when we're first coming out of college, we have that dream about how to achieve our professional success. And so that's kind of the illustration I'm showing here, right? Everybody, they got their feet kicked up on the road, and they think they have their map for getting to their goals in their careers. I'm gonna graduate college, then I'm gonna start my career, I'm gonna get a little bit of professional experience, and then, I'm gonna be, wherever I want to be in my career. That's the dream situation. But I think as we kind of go through, as you get a little bit of experience, I think you'll find out that your path to success is is a little more like this map, this pirate map that I'm showing you right here. And I want to take a little bit of time to kind of read through some of the locations that you see on this map. And we kind of start here with start my career C. But I like this right here where you get into the no experience sandbar. And as we continue to travel, we see there's the Bills Mountains that we have to climb over. And then we get to the debt-free country. We climb over the need clientele triangle to freelance career ocean. Now this one is a little specific here. I don't know why this is in here, but can't find a man quicksand. Let's step over that. And family land. And then we travel over here to Master's Degree Peninsula, Dream Job Island, and then we make it to Success Life land. And so a lot of times in our careers, what we'll find out is even though we think we're going to make a straight path to our goals, sometimes we find out there's a little bit more obstacles, a little bit of things that we have to accomplish in order to get to the levels that we want to get to. That's the reality of the professional experience, ladies and gentlemen. But there's a lot of things we can do to try to help ourselves. And you guys are in a good position because it's better to get this information early as opposed to like halfway in your career. So let me talk a little bit about my path and how I ended up where I am right now. I'm a mechanical engineer by degree. I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and I really never had any inclination about healthcare. And to be honest with you, I never had any thoughts about Lean or Six Sigma or anything else associated with process efficiency. I went to school thinking I was going to come out to be in structural design. And so when I came out, that was really what I was looking for. But my internship that I first got was actually at a company called Vought Aircraft in Dallas. And I was there with my internship as an environmental safety and health intern. That was my first job. And I finished up my internship there. And then I was coming out and I was trying to get a job back with Vought as a structural design engineer. But they didn't have any positions available for that. And, the recruiter was like, well, we don't have design engineering, but, we can get you a job in industrial engineering. I didn't even know what an industrial engineer was. I was like, I don't even know what that is. She's like, well, it has to do with, organization, efficiency, and stuff like that. And I said, well, I love to do that kind of stuff. Yeah, sign me up. So I became an industrial engineer. And then there was a little disruption between my industrial engineer group. They started a lean group at the time, and the industrial engineering group and the lean group butted heads. It's kind of like ants and like carpenter ants and termites. When you do too much of the same thing, those groups typically kind of butt heads. And so they had a strategy because these two groups didn't get along. They put me in the lean group to try to kind of break the ice. And then they took a person from the lean group and put them into the industrial engineer group. And so that's how I got into lean. It wasn't because I said I wanted to be a lean guy. I just was in the right place at the right time. I did some other team lead stuff there. And eventually got involved in Lean Six Sigma, which I had never heard of Lean Six Sigma, but my boss said it was something that he thought I'd be good at. So I did it. I did that while I was there. And about that time, I was watching a lot of Grey's Anatomy. It was one of my favorite shows at the time. And I was looking for an industry change. And Grey's Anatomy was such a great show that I thought, man, I'd love to get into healthcare. But to be honest with you, I couldn't get anybody to hire me. I had been doing Lean and Six Sigma for about 9 years, and I would approach healthcare groups. I would go to hospitals, and they'd say, "Well, you don't have any experience." And I say, "Well, what do you mean I don't have any experience? I've been doing this for 9 years." And they say, "Yeah, but you don't have any healthcare experience." And I actually went to Parkland, and I told Parkland, I said, I can't stop my job. Obviously I got a day job. I said, but I will work for you for free. I'll work on nights. I'll work on weekends just to prove to you that I know what I'm doing. And I still couldn't get them to hire me. But I ended up in the hospital. I had a medical issue, and I ended up at the hospital. I was supposed to be traveling to California. It was a Saturday, and I went into the hospital just for heart palpitations. And I was supposed to be on a plane on Sunday to go to California. And they said, well, you're not going anywhere. I was like, what do you mean I'm not going anywhere? He said, you're in AFib right now. You can't go anywhere. I was like, I'm supposed to be in California. They said, you're not going anywhere. And I ended up having to stay here in the hospital for probably a week. And I had to go in for a procedure to get the heart issue corrected. And they sent me to a hospital I'd never been to before in my life. But when I was getting wheeled out, I was just looking around the hospital, and I was like, I would love to work at a hospital like this. I mean, I'd never been to a hospital like that. It was so great. And they wheeled me out, and I continued to look for a job. And I'd never remember applying for that hospital, but it was the only hospital that ever called me back for a healthcare job. And that hospital was Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital. The boss at the time, Clint Abernathy, called me up, and he talked to me, and I ended up getting the job there. And people ask me all the time, like, how did you navigate to where you are? And I tell them there's nothing in my path that like it was planned by me. It was just a God-driven, God-guided path that led me to this place. And it just goes to show you that sometimes the path that we plan for ourselves is not the path that we always follow. And then in 2020 March, I actually started a company called Process Village because I saw there was a need for people who are really wanting to get involved in process improvement. There was a need for some support to try to help those people find jobs. And so not only do I work at Texas Health, I've started my own company, Process Village, to help people as they try to gain more information about Lean, Six Sigma, and continuous improvement. Any questions or comments before I move on? I'm trying to get my screen to show a wide screen over here. But do we have anybody with any questions or anything?
I don't.
Yes, I would just love, a question that I hear a lot of times from students is, what's one thing from a professional standpoint, advice you would give to students? And this might be a good thing for the end, but I always just like to ask our guests, what's one thing you would like to tell students who are on the call today? Something you wish you would have known then that you know now, or a word of advice about your career path?
Yeah, well, yeah, there will be something, but I'll go ahead and say it now. I mean, to me, and this is really, I really kind of got this from Britt. I'm stealing it. Because Britt, when you become a manager back in Presby, you'd have to go to Britt. It was kind of like a hazing. He's trying to intimidate you. So you go into his office, and he's got about 10 questions he's going to ask you. And like one of the last questions he'll ask you is like, okay, where do you want to be in 5 years? And he asked me that question, and I didn't really have an answer. I just told him, well, I just want to be working in a place where, I can enjoy my job. And he's like, no, yeah, that's great. But I mean, where do you want to be in 5 years? And so you'll see it later down the line. I say, for people who are just starting their career, I would actually tell them to determine where they want to be in 10 years or maybe even 15 years, because if you can realize where you want to be 10, 15 years down the road, you can start to look at the qualifications now for those requirements and start to go ahead and use that to help navigate you to get to where you need to be. that's probably the best advice I can give young professionals. Try to figure out where you want to be 10, 15 years from now. Look at the requirements for that and start doing the work now so that you'll just be there when you try to, get when it's time. But that's a good question.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. So I mean that was kind of my journey, and when it comes to Lean Six Sigma, you'll see there's a lot of uniqueness in terms of paths of people. One of the young ladies who taught me, she was one of the black belts that taught me. Her degree was actually in public relations. She worked in the African diamond mines doing Lean Six Sigma, and right now she's a healthcare consultant. I have a person that works at Texas Health Presbyterian right now. She started as a dietitian. She was probably one of my most resistant people to Lean Six Sigma, other than Dr. Britt Barrett. He was up there too, but he's come around. But she did too. Like she's, she was very like, yeah, this stuff doesn't work. But she started to buy in. She did all of her Six Sigma work at the hospital, and she's a black belt now, and she's a senior director at Presbyterian Hospital. I work with a young lady who she was in the Navy. She was a nuclear engineer in the Navy. She got her black belt. She was doing black belt work in the Navy shipyards, which I wish I could see that. That'd be awesome. And now she's a senior financial analyst at THR. And there was a young man who his degree was in biology. He did his Six Sigma work in a healthcare manufacturing plant, and now he's the president at Alliance. And so, there's a lot to take away from these paths to success. What does it tell us about Lean Six Sigma? It tells us that Lean Six Sigma provides the users freedom to move between industries and roles. So, you can kind of see that, a person's degree kind of starts in one place and then they move into another place. It complements the user's skills at any level of the organization. So you can be at almost any level and use Six Sigma. It's not dependent on a specific college degree. I think you kind of saw that in the last slide where, just all different degrees, but it's not specific to one type of organization or role. A lot of times people think that you have to be like an engineer to do this kind of work, but you don't. As long as you have a mind that you can start to systematically solve problems, then you're a great candidate for Lean Six Sigma. It extends to white collar and blue collar jobs. So there's no category in terms of, you could do it in construction or in the office environment. But the key is that you really need to gain experience to be successful at Lean Six Sigma. It's kind of like, does anybody play an instrument? Any hands in terms of people who play instruments? Virtual hands on the call. Okay. Well, if you do play an instrument, your teacher will always tell you practice, practice, practice. Like you have to practice in order to be good at any kind of instrument. And it's the same thing with Six Sigma. You really have to be able to practice it to really start to get good at it. So people were saying, yeah, Jazz, you've done a lot of talking here, but I still don't even know what is Lean Six Sigma. So let's take a couple of minutes and just kind of talk about what Lean Six Sigma is. In its most basic forms, it's really two components. And sometimes people don't realize this, but Lean itself is its own philosophy, and Six Sigma is another philosophy. Lean came from Toyota in Japan, and Six Sigma was kind of based, it was kind of a GE-based philosophy that is geared more towards quality. So the definition for lean is it identifies and eliminates tangible process waste. It's all about eliminating waste. We first have to identify what waste is, and then once we identify it, the goal is to eliminate it. Six Sigma, it really is very beneficial because it gives you a standardized practice for solving problems. That system is called DMAIC. So regardless of whatever problem you're trying to solve, you're always going to follow the DMAIC framework. You're going to define the problem, measure the problem, analyze the problem, come up with an improvement, and then control. And so it becomes as long as you practice it, it becomes very easy for you to at least know what you need to do next, because you're always just going to follow those 5 steps. So when you combine those 2 things together, that's where we get Lean Six Sigma, where it takes the elimination of waste from Lean and the quality improvement of Six Sigma. It combines all those tools together, and that's where Lean Six Sigma comes from. It's just the philosophy of adding those 2 philosophies together. Any questions about that? By the way, did you say we had a question?
Oh, no, I was saying, I think everyone's good for now.
Okay, all right. So let's just take a look at that in another way. Typically, there is a progression of how we use Lean Six Sigma. So like, it's one philosophy now, but even though it's one philosophy, when we have kind of low-hanging fruit, things that are very easy to see, typically we will use the Lean tools. Things that we can see, like excessive inventory. That's very easy to see with your eye. Typically, we just use Lean. We see the waste, inventory is waste, so we're going to figure out a way to eliminate the waste. We may be in a place where we see excessive waiting. We see the waiting and we eliminate the waiting. But you see from this graph, this is basically the stages of evolving improvement, and this is the performance of a process. And so basically it's saying, as we evolve from solving immediate problems to production focused problems, eventually we get to problems that are not so much easy to see with the eye. They may be kind of buried in data. They're associated with stability and variation. Then that's when we start to pull out the Six Sigma tools, looking at data to try to understand what the root causes are. Process improvement focused projects. And ultimately what we're trying to do is get to operational excellence, where we are running on all cylinders, and we have a highly effective process. There's something called design for Lean Six Sigma. That's really where you have an operation that you started from scratch with Six Sigma in mind. So it's not like you're trying to improve already existing processes. We've designed them for Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma. So in Six Sigma, there is a belting system, and those belts are white, yellow, green, black, and master black belt. These are basically rated in sequence of ranking. So your white belt is like your lowest level belt. It's just introductory. It's really for people who may participate in projects, but they're not really facilitating the projects. They're just like, they're the team members. So they need to at least have an introductory level about what Lean Six Sigma is. Typically, you can get a white belt, between 2 to 4 hours worth of training. And, it's typically just informational. A yellow belt is kind of a beginner levels belt. Sometimes people don't go to white belt, they'll go straight to yellow belt instead. And with yellow belt, it starts to introduce some tools that are being used in Lean Six Sigma. But typically they're the foundational tools. Some yellow belt programs will require a project. Some won't. Sometimes you'll see yellow belts between 1 day. Sometimes you'll see 2-day classes. So it varies a little bit, but it should give you introductory tools associated with Lean Six Sigma. Green belt is kind of the intermediate level belt, and you start to see a little bit more statistics associated with it. You know, we started talking about, you know, the variation and improving, you know, the variation. Green belt is typically where you'll start doing that kind of data analysis using some statistics. The black belt is kind of an experience level where, and green belt is typically about 40 hours worth of training. Usually you'll see, if there is a project associated with green belt, it's typically around $25,000 worth of savings associated with it. And then black belt is, you know, a lot of times we will spend a month worth of training. Typically it's like 4 weeks worth of training for a black belt. And again, some black belt programs don't have a project, some do. At the black belt level, you should always have a project. You know, again, this work is about being able to practice it. And at a black belt level, it's very important that you have project associated with it. Typically, they're going to ask you to try to save about $250,000 savings if you're going to do a project associated with black belt work. But again, it's very important. I got a LinkedIn message from someone, and they were saying, you know, I need some help from a master black belt. I see that you're a master black belt. And they started asking me questions. And so, you know, we're going back and forth. I was like, well, you know, we can get on the phone and just talk, but they didn't want to. So we spent about 45 minutes just going back and forth on LinkedIn email. And at the end, she was like, well, I appreciate it. I just needed the help of a master black belt. And I was thinking, she's like, you know, I'm doing some black belt work and I just needed a master black belt to answer these questions. And I was like, those weren't master black belt questions. those were just black belt questions. But that's why it's very important that people get the experience associated with these belts, because it really does matter when you're asked to do the work associated with each one. The master black belt is basically the highest level belt. Master black belt is a black belt that can manage other black belts. And so that's really the difference between the black belt and the master black belt. Any questions about that? Okay. So why does healthcare value Lean Six Sigma?
Really quick, Mr. Patterson, I think
Yes.
Yuma had a question.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
sure.
I thought I would wait for that. Yeah, I hope this is right time to ask this question. Like, there are many renowned organizations which are offering a black belt without prereq of these all pathways, you know. And so what should one do? What do you guide about it? We should go.
So you said they're offering black belt without what is that you said?
Without green belt prereq, and here I'm talking about ASQ certifications, you know, that kind of renowned organization. So why should one go for this long path of earning all the belts? Why not just to go directly? Are there pros and cons? Please tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing about ASQ that I'll say is, like, their requirements are probably the most strict, and for good reason. You know, like I know if you're going to do like a black belt for ASQ, then you got to show them like 3 years worth of green belt work that you've done, so that you can, you know, pass the requirement just to get to black belt. And so it's a well thought out program to try to make sure that what you get in terms of your certification is valuable. And so if I were to offer you any in terms of black belt courses, I think ASQ is probably at the top of the list, because if they allow you to get your black belt, it's typically because they're going to make you prove that you have done the work beforehand. But there's a lot of companies that won't make you do that, and that is a little bit of of a concern, just because, like I said, when we're talking about either playing an instrument or just think about martial arts. Like, I mean, if you're getting a black belt in martial arts, you don't skip the rest of the belts to go to black, I don't think. I mean, I think you have to work your way up. And the reason why you have to do that is because the belt itself doesn't symbolize that you just achieved the belt. I mean, what do you rather have? Would you rather have the belt, or would you rather have all of the knowledge that a person should have when they get to that level and not have a belt? I would rather have the knowledge and all that kind of stuff, because I think that's really what it should represent. If you have a black belt in Lean Six Sigma, it should represent the fact that you have all of the experience associated with getting to that level of certification. And so that's the concern. I mean, you can get the black belt without going through all of the rest of the work, but typically there will be some shortcomings in the learning, because you didn't, I mean, you just didn't have the opportunity to learn all of the other things that you needed to learn. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Experiential learning is more important. That's what you mean to say. Yeah. Yeah, get
Yes,
it.
absolutely.
Thanks.
And yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And that's really what it's all about. It's the experience that, and this is really what we're talking about here in terms of professional growth. What you're going to find out is that the experience is more important than anything else. Can you prove that you are a green belt? Can you prove that you are a black belt? Can you prove this? And so you want as much as possible to be able to attach the experience, because that's what's going to really help you. And that's what's going to really separate you from everybody else in the workforce, right? So really good question. So why does healthcare value Lean Six Sigma? They do value it because it's a method of achieving operational success. While we were working at Texas Health Dallas, we helped the organization create $36 million worth of savings between 2008 and 2015. There was an accumulation of $36 million worth of savings between all of the departments who were doing Lean Six Sigma work. So that's a great success to the organization. Lean Six Sigma provides training to increase employee value to the company. We've seen people who were about to be let go take the Six Sigma class and become like very, very, efficient at being managers and supervisors. And they go from being, almost out the door to being, one of the highest performing people in the organization, because they're problem solvers. Lean Six Sigma is a method to manage people and processes. And it not only to manage people and processes, but it gives you a standard way to manage people and process. So everybody's kind of on the same wavelength. It creates clear focus for project team members. So even when you lead teams, if everybody's Lean Six Sigma trained, then we kind of all have the same understanding about how to solve problems. It's a way of changing company culture and flexibility. And it's a way to promote and measure professional growth. And again, when people like to be able to achieve things, right? So if I'm a yellow belt today, I mean, it gives me something to shoot for, to say, I want to be a green belt and I want to be a black belt. And with that, again, when you say you're a green belt, what we want to happen is we want all of the experience that you should have as a green belt for you to have that experience. And so the belt just becomes it's kind of like just a validation of the experience that you have. So let's take a look at just some example projects. You may ask, okay, so what kind of work do you guys do in Lean Six Sigma? What does it look like? Well, we've used Lean Six Sigma to do projects dealing with blood culture contamination rate, reducing the blood culture contamination rate in the hospitals, ED patient flow. How do we improve the flow of patients in the ED? Improving the turnaround time between patients going from ED to the radiology department. We've reduced overtime units. We've looked at reimbursement coming to the hospital and how to optimize reimbursement. We've looked at salaries and wages, trying to get them more under budget in terms of labor and delivery, and the neonatal intensive care unit. Charge error, where we're trying to reduce errors in charging. HCAP scores. So, I mean, if you're familiar with HCAPs, that's satisfaction, patient satisfaction. How do we improve patient satisfaction? Reduction in time associated with chemo. Productivity projects. We see other salary and wages projects. How do we improve missed charges? Readmissions. And we've done like library projects, where, clinical staff members, they go to the library, or there's library resources when they're trying to get research done. And so how do we optimize the resources in the library? So Six Sigma applies to almost any process. Anything that has a process, you can use Six Sigma to try to improve, even at your own house. So let's talk a little bit about career enhancement opportunities. I said this before, this is what I call CEOs. And so in 2018, I did a project based on just trying to understand the correlation between, the number of opportunities people received and the some factors associated with that, And so, I surveyed people trying to get data to try to understand what was the strongest correlation in terms of helping people get job offers. And the things that I looked at was, and these were all people who were Six Sigma practitioners. So I looked at Lean Six Sigma certification level. Did they have one? Was it a Lean certification, a white belt certification, yellow belt, green, black, Master Black? The number of years experience associated with their Lean Six Sigma certification, none. 1 to 11 months, 1 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years, 7 to 10 years, 11 to 15, and then 16 years. Their current work position, were they not working? Were they full-time students, entry-level staff, mid-level, mid-management, senior management, or self-employed? Were they working? What position were they seeking? Were they not looking for a position? Were they looking for an entry-level position, mid-level, mid-management, senior management, or self-employed? And then how many times did they apply in the last year for a position? So, we use statistical software, and we did the correlation. And I will say that the two strongest correlations with people who were practicing Lean Six Sigma was the certification level and the experience. Both of them put together was the most, the biggest contributor. One or the other was great, but both of them together was the biggest contributor in terms of opportunities for career enhancement. But when we look at the job market in 2021, we do have some things to look at. Now, what I've researched and saw is that the projection for especially healthcare administration is supposed to be very, very good. But what they're saying is that there's hiring reservations just because of post-COVID. And so, they're hiring, but they're hiring very, very wisely. And they're trying to hire people who have a bunch of skills in one person. Like, we're not going to hire a bunch of people, but the people we do hire, they need to be able to do a lot of things. And so what that has created is fierce job competition, where we really have to be able to show the things that we know. And so that really is the is the greatest opportunity when we talk about strategy for your career paths and how Lean Six Sigma will help it. When you're talking about being able to show your experience or what you know in terms of your experience, Lean Six Sigma is a great way to do that. But there's a couple of myths that I want to bust, and I think some of them we've already kind of talked about a little bit. Obtaining a certification is more important than doing a project. The answer to that is false. Now, obviously, from the study, we know that if you have a certification, it's better than not having a certification. But if you told me, you know, which one would I take over the other, I would choose doing the work over the certification. Another thing, finding a good Lean Six Sigma project can be hard, and that's true. You know, we sometimes spend weeks trying to find a good Lean Six Sigma project so that people can learn the things that they need to learn. But once we find it, it's well worth the fact that we had to find it because of the learning associated with it. All Lean Six Sigma training is created equal. That's false. I think we just kind of talked about that, right? Where, I mean, we know there's all kind of training out there. And to me, it just depends on what you're looking for. You know, sometimes people are looking that, you know, they just need a little bit of a bump on their resume. And, you know, and so there's nothing wrong with going to get your certification for that. But if you're really wanting to be able to use the information associated with your belt, obviously you're going to want to be able to practice it. All organizations value Lean Six Sigma the same. That's false. You know, some are just starting. Some have more experience in it. You know, so you just want to be aware of that as well. Every organization has a different level of engagement in terms of Lean Six Sigma. Lean Six Sigma project work can be difficult at times. That's true. These projects are not always easy. And if they were, you probably wouldn't need Lean Six Sigma to do them. So a lot of times that is the value in knowing how to do this work is even though it's, you know, it's available for anybody to do, not everybody has they've been trained to be able to do it. And so that's where your value comes in is the projects that are really hard to do. If they were easy, they would have already been done. All managers value Lean Six Sigma the same. No, like we just talked about, they're kind of like organizations. Some have more understanding of Lean Six Sigma than others. But anyone can become a Lean Six Sigma expert. That's true. There's not really, it doesn't matter, you know, what your background is or what your profession is. If you put in the work, you can be a Lean Six Sigma expert. Any questions about any of that?
I have a quick question, so I hope I won't take much time.
Fine.
So this part of the project part of the certification, is it restricted to an employee of certain organization when you're working, or a non-working person can go for certification and any organization can provide projects opportunities to? How does it go?
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, a project is, like I said, sometimes it's hard to find. Sometimes it's hard to find if you work in a place. You still may find it hard to find. And so if you don't have a job, it makes it a little bit harder to find, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. I've worked with people who they didn't have a job, you know, like, they didn't have a job, but, you know, like I had one young man, his father was the president of a hospital in Palestine. He didn't have a job. And so we got him to do a project for his father in Palestine because everybody was virtual anyway. And so we did the project virtual, and it was a awesome project. I mean, it was one of it was just because of the fact that he was able to accomplish it over the distance. And, you know, he spoke the language, so there was no language barrier. He had the support of the president, which was his dad. And so it went really well. So, you know, if you don't have a job, it doesn't mean you can't do a project. It just means we got to find a project. is all the problem. And that's possible.
And the certifying body, they provide projects, or is it a mutual thing? Like you look for project yourself, a person seeking certification?
Yeah, and it just depends on the organization. Sometimes an organization, because they know some people don't have a project, they will give you a simulated project. So they'll say, okay, we understand that not everybody has a project. So, it's not a full scale project, but it's at least enough to help you learn. And sometimes some organizations will do that. I know Villanova did that. Some organizations, that's the reason why they don't have a project, because they know some people won't have a project. And then others, they will. Usually if you have a program built into the organization of your company, it's fairly easy to get the project somewhere in the organization. But depending on where you go outside of the organization, it depends on if a project will be needed or not. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So it just depends. Yeah, it depends. But or like with Villanova, with ASQ, they may say, okay, you have to prove that you've done 3 years worth of the work already. And if you've done it, then you can go ahead and do the rest of the work for black belt or something.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. So we were just talking about just the myths and busting the myths. And so, when I was a manager hiring black belts, there's 3 questions that I will always ask. And if you're not hiring for a Six Sigma belt, then, these questions may not come up. But if we're hiring for a Six Sigma belt, what I would always ask, regardless of the person, always, I'm gonna ask 3 questions. Where did you get your belt? What did your training entail? And then tell me about your project. Always. Because you can learn a lot just by asking those 3 questions about a belt. You'll always learn a lot about that. And so you just want to be able to answer those 3 questions if you're talking about a job associated with Six Sigma. Okay, so we are wrapping up, and so this kind of goes back to the question that Quincy asked. And if I had any recommendations for as you go down the path to success. And like I said, and I stole this from Britt, I modified it. So once I modified it, it's not his anymore, it's mine. But the first thing I would say is, create a 10-year professional plan. It's not what you're going to do in 5 years, what you're going to do in 10. Because again, I think what that does is where do you want to be in 10 years? What position do you want to be in? Because I think from that, you can identify the skills you'll need to get to your destination. It's kind of like GPS, right? You put in the coordinates and then it kind of says, okay, here's obstacles. It takes you around all of the traffic and all that kind of stuff. So you want to put your coordinates in for 10 years, put your 10-year coordinates in now so that you can kind of navigate around all the traffic. But make sure as you go through your career that you document your experiences. When I look at my resume, sometimes, I kind of forget some of the things that I did because I didn't document it, And, they ask you questions about certain things and you're like, oh yeah, I did that. And they're like, oh, well, that's not on your resume. So make sure you document these things so that you can add them to your resume as you go through time. And then make sure you identify mentors to help guide you along the way. It's really important that you talk to people who've been there before and done it before. They can really help you to kind of navigate to your path of success. Any questions about any of this that we've gone through over the last hour?
I have just one question, I guess, which would be opposite of what you just gave. What's one thing students should do this summer, let's just say? So we're looking at a 10-year plan. So then let's just back up to what's one action item that you would recommend that they do this summer or this semester or this year, but like an immediate action step.
Yeah, I mean, well, hopefully they can start now just determining what they want to do in 10 years. So maybe they don't do all the work associated with it, but I can only say for me, I was very late getting my internships. I mean, I kind of had an idea that I wanted to be an engineer, I was mechanical engineering, but I really didn't do any like upfront work to kind of be ready to get into the workforce. I kind of waited until like the very last year to like even think about what I needed to do. So, I mean, if nothing else, try to figure out what you want to be in 10 years. But I mean, start something right now. Start getting your plans so that you can start doing something in the next year or two so that you're started, initiated it. So even if you're a sophomore or a junior, start doing something now to help you when you get out of your college career. That's a good question.
We're taking notes.
Any other questions?
Yes, I had a question. As far as I guess, the time frame for the certification, how often do you have to recertify yourself, or is it a one-time thing?
Yeah, that's all. That's the funny thing about Lean Six Sigma. Even though it's all about reducing variation, it's the most it's so varied in terms of the requirements. It's probably the most varied, like certification I've ever seen in my life. And so all of this stuff is totally dependent on the individual certifying bodies. And so ASQ is going to always make you, recertify. You'll have to, do a test ever so often so that you can get your, renew your certification. Other places, they don't. I got my master black belt from Villanova, and so I don't have to renew anything for that. I got my black belt through my old company, Vault Aircraft, and I don't have to renew it. So there's so much variation, and I think that's one of the things that confuses people, because there's nothing that really tells you what is the standard. But to me, the standard is, the making sure that you have everything you need should be the standard. That's what I think the standard should be. So if you're going to be a black belt, you should have everything that a black belt should have. But that's not always the case for every organization. And I'll say that's not always a bad thing. I mean, sometimes, those recertifications and those tests, it's a way of making more money for the people who are selling you the certifications. And I mean, I'm not all about that. I mean, as long as you can demonstrate you know how to do the work, I don't think you have to always do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. Thank you so much for your presentation. And I was wondering, so if someone wants to take the green belt certification, how do you go about it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of places that you can take it. Again, the school offers. I mean, your UTD offers the class. There's a bunch of them all over the place. It's just a matter of making sure that the class gives you what you need. And that's the key, is making sure it gives you what you need. Again, sometimes I talk to people and they say, Jazz, I am looking for a green belt. And the first question I'm gonna ask them is, okay, I mean, why are you looking for it? I mean, do you want to be able to apply the knowledge, or do you just need a bump in your resume? And if a person needs a bump in their resume, I don't knock them for that, because sometimes you just need a boost, and you're not trying to spend 3 months doing a project. But there are certain programs that will give you that. And then there's certain programs where people say, no, I want to be able to, after I get my green belt, I want to make sure that if they ask me to do a project, I can do it. And, you know, I steer them in that direction if that's what they want to do.
Thank you.
Can I ask extended question for this question? Actually, I had in my list of questions, like if one go like that, they're doing green belt or yellow belt from their respective university, and later on in the career, they want to do from a bigger organization like ASQ, and it happens that they don't accept certain belts are accredited nationally and certain are not. Is this the case?
For like ASQ.
Yes, please, for ASQ. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, their requirements are fairly strict, and I don't know if I can't remember if like I don't know if they make you have a green belt from their organization. I mean, I had a conversation with a young man like a couple months ago because he wanted to do like a black belt or something, and he was looking at ASQ. I'm just going off of that conversation because I think he was saying he just had to prove that he did 3 years worth of green belt level work, because he didn't have a green belt, but he wanted to go to black belt. And so again, it's kind of specific to the organization. I think ASQ is going to make you prove that if you don't have a green belt, that you've done the 3 years worth of equivalent work before they let you get into the program. And they also have a test you have to take. You got to take this test as well. So
Yes, they do have 3-year requirement for all the bets, at least from their website. I see that. I have another question. I hope I'm not going tangential. Do you see like a real true application of Lean and Six Sigma in clinical work? Like I see it, what have I learned all during this degree? All the application focuses more on the non-clinical part of the, care delivery. So is in the field like medical profession, like physicians themselves are creating these and applying the clinically these techniques to improve care or not?
yeah, I mean, you can apply to anything. I mean, they used to ask me to go into deliveries. They're like, Jazz, you want to come into this delivery and do some observations? And I'm like, no, I don't want to go in there because they want to see you pass out. But we've done that. We look at deliveries, surgeries. I know at Dallas we spent a lot of time on clinical aspects. Now, what we try not to touch is, or what's hard to touch is physician practices. Like, I can't go in there and say, well, you delivered that baby wrong. We got to do, I can't do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Doesn't it have to be internally from physician community to apply Lean Sigma in the clinical part of the care delivery system too? Right now, it is in administrative or in a workflow, but not necessarily. Even I think to nursing, yes, it does, but not in the domain of the physician true hardcore clinical work. So, do you see industry going that way?
I mean, it can definitely go that way as long as the physicians are open to the analysis and the recommendations. But obviously, they're going to have the last word because they're the doctors. But like again, I've been asked to go into surgeries. I can go in there and I can look to see how I can't really critique the doctor's technique, maybe a little bit, but I can observe how efficient things are getting done. If they're supposed to be, passing certain instruments between people and, how long does it take to do certain things? We can look at that, but we just got to make sure we got to put parameters because again, the doctor has final say on what happens in terms of the clinical practice. But we can observe, we can recommend, we can make improvement, as long as they say, yeah, that's a valid improvement, then yeah, we can definitely do that.
Thanks. I also have the same feeling, but as a former physician, I see that if it is truly applied the way it is, and I do feel as you're saying, it is quite rigid circle to include in and make doctors do the way you want to do. But if it goes from the med school, I feel like, I mean, if they start teaching this in the med school, then things
Right.
can change. I feel like,
Yeah, especially if there's doctors who are Six Sigma certified, then it's not like a guy like me coming to tell them. It's actually one of their peers, and I think that's definitely something they'd listen to when the facilitator of the project is one of their peers. I think absolutely.
Thank you, and thanks a lot for tolerating all my questions and
No, it's
answering
great.
them well. Thank you.
It's great questions.
Hey, Jazz, I'm curious. I really like your background. And is that a process map? What is that?
Yeah, this is actually a process map. This is not like a generated background here. This is
Oh, okay.
this is a process map. And it's an example process. Well, it's actually a real project that I did, but I do use it as an example when I'm doing some training. So yes, that's labor and delivery, and it is a salary. I mean, it's a supply budget project where they were overrunning the budget $18,000 per month, and the goal was to, so basically they were overrunning budget by like $200,000 a year. And so we had to reduce the amount of spending down by $18,000 per month. And that was one of those projects that affected doctors because what we did is, like, part of the project is we like bolted all the cabinets shut, and so the doctors, the labor and delivery doctors would go in and say, I need this. And the nurse was like, well, they bolted the door, they bolted all the cabinets shut. And they were like, who did that? And like, well, Jazz did it. So they come out yelling at me. And so, like, even in that, what we realized is that we have to get physician buy-in on a lot of this stuff. Even if it's not so much the specific clinical practice, even the things around the clinical practice have to be discussed with the doctors so that they agree to it. So
That's very interesting. And thank you for the informative presentation. Really appreciate it.
you're welcome. Thank you. Well, if there's no other questions, then I just want to say thank you to everybody on the call. I hope that it was a little bit of information for you. So I appreciate the time.
All righty, well, thank you so much, Mr. Patterson, for coming in and speaking. I'm sure people have some more questions. I know I definitely have some more, but I know we're gonna have another event, and I think people can definitely kind of reach out to you to have individual conversations as well.
Absolutely.
I kind of mentioned this, but keep an eye out for event number 2. We're trying to continue to make this into a series. I feel like we just saw the surface of the iceberg here. I'm sure there's a ton more information and really a wealth of knowledge here. So thank you all for coming out. I know we've slowly had some people dropping off, but amazing that everyone kind of came out right now. And I think if that's about it, then I made sure to take a screenshot. And again, thank you all, and we will catch you guys around.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Adway, is there anything you need from me?
I think that is about good. I just wanted to ask kind of any thoughts on the event, anything you wanted to mention. Let me quit recording real quick.